Welcome back to my channel. I'm attorney Andrea, and yes, you read that title correctly. Today we are talking about how California has allocated a whopping $50 million to defend its policies, support immigrants, and basically pick another fight with President Donald Trump. Think of it like an over-the-top WWE showdown, except for instead of folding chairs and steel cages, we've got lawyers and court briefs.
Dozens are protesting against President Donald Trump.
Immigration enforcement. More than a dozen immigration judges.
Immigration and the southern border.
I will declare a national emergency at our southern border.
Now, you may have heard that California's governor, Gavin Newsom, has recently signed two pieces of law authorizing $50 million to finance court battles against the Trump administration and to support legal services for immigrants. Basically, $25 million goes to the State Department of Justice, led by the Attorney General, for litigation against the Trump administration. And the other $25 million goes to nonprofits providing legal aid for immigrants who might be facing deportation or other legal threats under federal policies. Now, this has sparked an uproar. Some people are cheering, saying, "Fight the good fight, California." Now, others are crying foul, saying, well, what about the wildfires? What about the roads, the homelessness crisis, etc.? Now, legally, can California even do this? Well, the thing is, states possess what are known as police powers. In other words, that's the authority to enact and enforce laws that promote the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of their residents. Funding legal battles that protect state policy is arguably part of that. The state legislature can allocate money as it sees fit, as long as it doesn't violate any other constitutional provisions regarding spending or discriminate unlawfully. But we'll get more into the legal specifics in a moment. For now, just know that California's legislature is basically saying, we see your federal threats and we raise you $50 million. Let's do a brief history lesson. So back during Trump's first term, the state sued the federal government over 100 times, covering everything from immigration policy to environmental rollbacks, from challenges to sanctuary cities to attempts to cut federal funding for non-compliance. I mean, we are talking about a litigation frenzy that could put any Kardashian's divorce attorneys to shame. Essentially, California's legal claims often revolve around the argument that the federal government is exceeding its enumerated powers or violating constitutionally protected rights. And California is just not shy about taking that argument directly to court. Now, amid all the flashy headlines surrounding this topic, let's not forget the $25 million to help undocumented immigrants. So people who are at risk of mass deportations and other legal vulnerabilities. This money funds nonprofit organizations, giving them resources that they need to represent individuals in immigration courts or even handle things like wage theft cases. But critics are raising questions. For instance, what if this money goes to defending individuals with serious felonies? Or is this an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars when there are so many other needs in the state right now, like wildfire relief? What about the legal angle? When the fact is, states can provide legal services to whomever they choose as a matter of state policy, so long as they don't discriminate in ways prohibited by law. And federal law doesn't bar states from offering legal assistance to immigrants. However, political opposition frames it as supporting criminal aliens if no limitations are placed on who qualifies. To quote critics, lawmakers clarify that these funds aren't meant for violent felons. That's not a legal requirement per se, but it's a politically wise caveat. And if the legislation is ambiguous, it could lead to lawsuits claiming misuse of state funds. So from a legal standpoint, California is on fairly solid ground offering legal aid to immigrants. The real debate is more political than constitutional. Now, how about the other half of the money, the $25 million that goes straight to the Attorney General's office for lawsuits? The Trump administration's second term has signaled potential ramp-ups in deportations, threats to cut federal funding, and even more environmental regulation rollbacks. If you're California, you're essentially living in a perpetual state of wait. You're gonna do what next? It's complicated, but in short, California's $25 million litigation war chest is essentially a legal seatbelt. It signals that they are buckled in and ready for a bumpy and costly ride with the feds. But again, the critics say, why are we throwing money at lawsuits when we've got entire neighborhoods reduced to ashes after the devastating aftermath of the wildfires in January of 2025? Essentially, there's no direct legal conflict in allocating funds for fire recovery as well. States can do both. They can authorize large-scale disaster funds and set aside money for future lawsuits. So the argument is more about prioritization and optics. Republicans claim that it's tone deaf to launch new litigation funds while the state is literally on fire. Newsom's defense is that these lawsuits protect the very funding that California might need for future disasters. Legally, the legislature can appropriate money in multiple directions. The courts are unlikely to weigh in on the wisdom of that appropriation, only its lawfulness. Now, we don't know yet how the Trump administration might respond. Could the feds file their own suits or withhold money from the state? Possibly. In a second term, Trump might direct agencies to ramp up enforcement or interpret statutes in ways that hamper California's access to certain grants. It's way too early to say, but any Trump countermeasures can and likely will be litigated, which is precisely why California is stashing $25 million away for litigation. It's like preemptively stocking up on water and batteries before a hurricane. Only in this case, the hurricane is a legal storm. What are your thoughts? Is California valiantly defending constitutional freedoms? Or is it just a clever resistance branding strategy? Critics are labeling it as a slush fund, painting it as an unrestrained pot of money for political showdowns. Meanwhile, supporters are arguing that this is about protecting people's rights. And sometimes that means going to court. Long story short, political stunt or not, the legality generally stands if the appropriation is within the state's realm of authority. The real fireworks remain in the court of public opinion. So there you have it, California's $50 million chess move against the Trump administration. On one side, it's about upholding state policies, providing legal support to immigrants, and dare we say, championing the California resistance. On the other hand, critics see an expensive political stage play that diverts funds from more urgent needs like wildfire recovery and everyday infrastructure. But at the end of the day, the courts will be the final decision makers. But knowing these two players, it's safe to assume that we are in for one heck of a legal show. So how do you feel about California funneling $50 million into legal battles and immigrant aid? Sound off in the comments below. Until next time, thank you for watching. I'm Attorney Andrew.